He doesn't understand the concept that mics are hot.
Take it as a sign of disrespect.
I say a lot of things. I don't really know what you're talking about. Really.
Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everybody. Pasta Jardula here.
And I am unfortunately Fiorella.
Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everybody. Pasta Jardula here.
What is
Hold
going
on. Sorry. Boomer moment here.
He's got a lot of those.
See, I'm gonna blame this on you. All right, hold on. Hello, can you hear me?
Why wouldn't people hear you?
Okay, see that, fam? Why did you wait so long?
What? I'm so
God,
confused.
It's happy 420. I didn't have the settings right. I should always like turn off the volume to the rock fan and the YouTube, and I didn't. I had the volume up because I have to have the volume on so I can hear you and Oz bitch at me.
Oh, okay, great. I'm sure we're not the only ones. I'm sure somebody is back there who also has to hear you talk about calling congressmen and all that bullshit. So, you know.
Hold on a second. You bring that shit up again. Fam, did you guys commiserate to come after me like that? I thought I corrected the record. If you heard me on Misty's show in TNT last week, I said, I want to clarify. I am not a call your Congress type of guy, even though I said it twice. I'm a call out your Congress guy.
Sure.
The big difference.
You said something similar right after that. But, all right. So moving on.
By the way, fam, wait a second. You have to also acknowledge Oz looking like Walter Sobchak as well. I would look like Walter this morning with my vest. He's got the overalls on, but look at the glasses, you know, and the hat. Like, you know, he's got like one of those Duck Dynasty hats right there. Look at that thing, fam. Come on.
Why are you insulting Oz?
I'm not insulting Oz. I'm giving him props.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, fam. Yeah, so we have a pretty hefty folder today. Hi, fam. So how are all of you doing today? I'm talking to my fams, of course, not you, fam.
And we've already had people come in the door, say hi, jump on in, showing love, all that kind of stuff.
Good.
Okay.
We need love in this moment of chaos. And yeah, it's not good. It's not good right now what's happening, fam.
Get her rolling.
All right. You want to get rolling?
Let's do it.
All right. So Malcolm Nance has been the mockery. Many people, I mean, we're all having a great time with this dude, okay? He's an intelligence asset. He has worked on behalf of the U.S. intelligence community. And I think he's a pretty prime depiction of what intersectional imperialism is, fam, right? And he keeps just being so ridiculous. Half the time I'm thinking that this is a joke, it's a parody. And then I'm reminded of Steve's words that we live in a cartoon. So, you know, it makes sense once you know that. So he went on Joy Reid's show on MSDNC, and he's a fighter, fam. He's taking up arms. He's fighting these radical, right-wing extremist Russian Putin puppets in Ukraine. So let's take a look at what he said in this wonderful interview.
Well, as you know, I spent quite a bit of time here in the pre-war period. And when the invasion happened, I had friends who were in Donetsk, who were in the Ukrainian army, who were writing to us and telling us, we're not going to survive tonight. We've been hit 500 times. You know, these are graduates of Defense Language Institute. These are my friends. And, you know, as the more I saw of the war going on, the more I thought, I'm done talking. All right. It's time to take action here. So about a month ago, I joined the International Legion here in Ukraine, and I am here to help this country fight, you know, what essentially is a war extermination. This is an existential war, and Russia has bought it to these people, and they are mass murdering civilians. And there are people here like me who are here to do something about it.
Wow. Wow. Fam, these I had friends here, fam, and these people have been hit 500 times. They're not going to survive the night. So that's it. I said, I'm done talking. You know, and the propaganda of the extermination and the Donbass. Are you really that stupid, Malcolm, to think that we can't look back and see what's been going on? Yeah, there's been an extermination policy taking place, and that's from the Azov battalion trying to kill the people in the Donbass for the last 8 years.
Right. I mean, yeah. The same thing. They're completely not talking about that. It's funny because you could put all his words and apply it to the Ukrainian military, which is plagued and controlled by the majority of these Banderite paramilitary fascists. And when we say that here, we're not talking about some idiot with a Confederate flag. We're talking about literally fascists. But the war crimes have been detailed in independent media from journalists who are there. Multiple journalists have disappeared, not just Gonzalo, but multiple journalists have disappeared. So that's what they're ignoring when they say this. Now, he put this picture up, right, of him in his little uniform, right, in black and white, and it says, "I'm done talking." Hashtag join the Legion. Hashtag stop Russia. Hashtag Slava Ukraini, which is, of course, once again, Stefan Bandera's like a fascist call out, which I'm sure as a Black man, he has to know a little bit about, right? Mm-hmm. Apparently not. So Max Blumenthal posted this tweet. Retired Navy Senior Chief Peter Morlock Jr. on MSNBC's Malcolm Nance. Quote, he left the Naval Security Group in disgrace, and we generally have a good laugh at his self-promotion, exaggeration of performance and associations, and his pretense of expertise. So somebody wrote an opinion article on, you guys should read it. It's kind of funny because it's coming from people within the system. And it says, opinion, a matter of honor in the fiction of Malcolm Nance. You can tell by the way he talks, by the way he did that interview. He's an exaggerator. He's a performer. He's a useful idiot or propaganda. No, but I mean, you could figure that out before you could even read this article. But another thing that I want to point out, I guess this tweet resonated with a lot of people because I said nothing defines intersectional imperialism quite like a Black U.S. intelligence asset fighting for Nazis on behalf of the slave master's empire. Because if you think about it, that's exactly what he's doing. And he's not really fighting. We all know this, right? Like, I should have put fighting in quotes because everybody knows this guy isn't really going to be on the front lines actually fighting for Ukraine. I mean,
a lot of people think that video was made in Warsaw.
Yeah.
Like, really?
It's hard to tell. I mean, you know, we've seen green screen be used with Zelensky. We've seen a lot of the propaganda, a lot of the journalists and the observers there in Ukraine say they bring in crews of film people. And yeah, so I mean, I don't put it past them, but somebody pointed this out. And I think it was Maps Ukraine that pointed this out. That's a popular account. And they said, fucking LARPing clown. And if you look at the detail that they're pointing out here, they're pointing out in this picture, particularly the weapons that are in there. So the safety is off. The hammer is down, which means a closed bolt. The magazine's not fully seated, and an empty chest rig. So they said, American Navy SEAL vet volunteering in Ukraine doesn't know basic gun safety. Forgot to add that his chest rig for the magazines is also empty. This LARPing clown came to Ukraine for photo shoots, nothing more. So,
well, there is something more too. He's there to recruit. He even says join the Legion in his tweet, right? So, I mean, I was thinking about why would this asshole, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure he's happy for this assignment. Oh yeah. I get to play G.I. Joe too as well. You know what I'm saying? And not to mention, This guy has always said stupid shit to try to make himself look more macho and bravado. Remember
Right.
the Dan Cohen, he retweeted about when, Malcolm Nance said, I know waterboarding is torture because I did it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's who we're dealing with over here.
Which is his own colleagues have talked about in that article too. His own colleagues make fun of him. So I thought it was funny that Max Blumenthal changed his profile picture to to Malcolm Nance and said new profile pic. So I thought that was funny. But of course, a lot of people were trolling him, and we decided to troll him, fam, with our Legion, the real Legion, fam, right here. Johnny, Glory, and I.
Yeah, just so you
Black
all know,
Panther.
that is a communist Russia flag draped around Fiorella there. Just that angle, okay? Yes, and there is weapons inside her leg there that she will kill you as Russian spy. So
It's a sickle, and then Glory has a blade and a non-mask.
got a
So
machete.
she's like the anarchist, and then Johnny is a Black Panther. So honestly, you can decide for yourself if that's fictional or the
Are you
truth.
guys LARPing?
Are we LARPing, or
Are
are
you
we
LARPing?
just, or are we just giving you an exaggerated version of who we are on the inside? I don't know. You decide.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah.
If you know us, you know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Steve knows the answer, fam.
So, fam, is this the Kiev Independent or the Kyiv Independent?
Fam, whatever it is, whatever you want it to be.
And I'm
He
saying Kiev.
I think it's Kiev,
Yeah.
but that's just my personal opinion.
I think the Western term they go Kyiv.
So, fam, he retweeted this. Malcolm did, and this is also breaking news for everybody who doesn't know. Well, inflation is at an all-time high. Food prices are out the window. I mean, every time I go get food, it's insane. Like at the grocery store, I'm not talking about I'm talking about the grocery store. They're out of chicken. There's a chicken shortage already. And this is crazy. So CNN is said that the U.S. is prepping another $800 million military aid package for Ukraine. And according to these officials and sources familiar with the planning, the details of the aid are still being discussed, meaning we're not privy to those details. Our senior administration officials said that the aid could be approved within the next 36 hours. The aid was already approved, essentially. So
See, there's Fiorella. Not yet. There it goes. See? Okay, so she should be back any second. Is that her?
yes, I'm back. I don't know what.
I was just about to take over, but I'll let you go.
No, well, he has to. Okay, there you are.
You're
So
there.
the aid, I was just saying, like this aid has already essentially been approved, and I just wanted to point out the fact that we are the American
Hold
people
on.
are like.
There we go.
Okay, I was just saying, like, the aid has already been approved, and like we're in a situation in this country where people are increasingly getting upset that why this is happening. I mean, it's not even political anymore for people. It's just a matter of like, why?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that, fam.
You were saying too, as well, is like, there's all this shit's going on over here, like there's still homeless people living in the streets. There's people going to get thrown out of their houses. I don't want to say our roads and our infrastructure need work on it, because now they're going to be pushing out, like I said, like all the winds of the infrastructure package, but I'm sure that money is going to be kind of pissed away. The contractors are never going to do the job properly, and they never get that shit straight anyways, and nobody even looks to see where the funding mechanisms are going. Not to mention they're going towards a lot of what we talked about with shadow ban refugee, right? The pipelines and stuff, they're going to run on these freeways. So it's like, yeah, but there's another 800 million. Let's throw it all to, weapons manufacturers going to get all that money. So it's like I said a long time ago, right? They don't care who wins the war. They don't care who loses the war. All they care is that they have the war, and then therefore they get their money. And that's what's going on. So the 800, and how does the 800 million just get to go, rush through? There's not no public hearings. That what's going on. I would bet people on both sides of the aisle right now would probably say, yeah, we don't need to continue to send 800 million right now over there when we have a lot of shit to deal with over here. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think people are realizing that. It's just like the propaganda that we see in the mainstream and on social media is increasingly pretending that people aren't seeing that. But really, people are seeing it. If you talk to anybody, they're like, why are we sending more money to Ukraine? And there's already, like I said, food shortages here. Yeah. And I think a lot all that's happening. By the way, the ruble continues to go up. Russia continues to stabilize. Nicaragua has actually reduced the cost of their gas prices as a country that's being sanctioned and, constantly had to deal with making sure they had enough food for their people. They're well equipped to deal with this sort of thing. And what's happening in Shanghai, of course, is affecting the economic sector. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But there is nothing separate right now of what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in China, in my opinion, and what's happening with the global pandemic actions. So, yeah.
And here's something interesting to talk about too as well. The Pakistan new government, the one that just replaced Imran Khan, Sharif, and he's like a political dynasty in Pakistan for many years. They are rolling back the fuel subsidies that Imran Khan gave to the people in mid-January when it came to gasoline, electricity, whatnot. So they're rolling back those subsidies because the IMF is telling them to do so because of their loans and their situation. So they want their money, and these puppet governments now enacted on their people through austerity measures. So when you're talking about all this stuff that's going on with, Ortega and Nicaragua and whatnot, it just rings a bell. It's the United States empire is consistent across the board, by the way, with their tactics. They do what they got to do. So this next section, should we read Super Race?
Sure. Yeah.
Fam, I can do it and always appreciate it on the couch if you want.
No, that's okay.
The Convo couch is over there. It's now the Gomez couch, but it's cool. Rob McMurtry, thank you for the super great contribution. Is always appreciated on the couch. See, fam? Nice for you. Trey Wright, who had an awesome Malcolm Nance picture, by the way.
He did.
You see what he did the Malcolm Nance pose, right? The picture, and he had a you know what? Go to Trey Wright.
A dildo fan. He had a giant dildo.
Fam. I was trying to be
What's wrong with the word dildo? What? Okay.
Malcolm Nance is probably in Poland drinking hard whiskey with Zelensky and Sean Penn, says Trey Wright. Trey's on fire. Hey, Rem, great contribution. Happy 420. Always the best. Keep on a trucking. Thank you, Arem, for that beautiful contribution.
Thank you, Arem. I don't have anything right now. I just want to throw that out there. I don't have anything right now. It's a very sad, sad time. I'm going to need to change that, but, yeah. Anyway.
You guys want to see Gomez real quick? Gomez, come here. Come here. Come on. Hey, look, you're on TV.
Gomez.
He's so cute. Look at Gomez.
Gomez will be replacing Pasta on the show soon.
Oh, there's Fee. He wants to meet Fee. Oh, Gomi. Okay. Get out of there. Oh, God. Here. That's Gomez.
That's Gomez.
So, fam.
Damn.
I don't know if you know this. I don't have my newspaper hat, but I am a newspaper guy. And to start the next section off, I saw this. It was kind of like I had to change the title, fam. I had a different title for the Biden administration. I'm like, Biden administration standing strong with the CDC recommendations, wants the mask back on, right? And then I get the newspaper this morning and it says right here, Biden White House mixed mask messages. I got to write that down. And he says pretty much, he says, well, when asked early in the morning, he said, well, that's up to them, meaning people if they should wear masks on plane. He literally said it's up to them. Needless to say, later on that evening, and we'll get to it, he says something completely different. I mean, these guys are so bad. They're so inconsistent. They can't even stay on message for one day. I expected Victoria Noodle, whatever her name, Newland, was to pop out from behind her and say, oh, he beat my record. So that's what's going on with that. Let me pull up the folder because it's on the other page. So this is from the AP. It says, moving beyond mass, Biden toils to put pandemic behind him. So it says, Joe Biden administration has been working for months to prepare people to rethink their personal risk calculations as the nation gets used to the idea of living with an endemic COVID-19. But that measured approach disappeared abruptly when a federal judge on Monday threw out the federal requirement to mask up when using mass transit. The ruling added to the urgency of the messaging challenge as the administration tries to move past the virus in the lead up to the midterm elections. Okay. So boom, boom, hello. Searching for votes, trolling for votes. After the government last month eased indoor mask wearing guidelines, oh, thank you for the vast majority of Americans, even in schools, bullshit, masking on planes was still one of the last redoubts of the national COVID-19 restrictions. Now, as the policy falls, the administration turns to accelerating its efforts to provide the best advice for millions making their own personal safety decisions in the still dangerous pandemic. It's both a public health imperative and an important shift in emphasis for Biden's political future. What the hell is Biden's political future when the Easter Bunny's got to go save him and get his ass? There's an opportunity now. Instead of saying that it is a disappointing ruling, they could say this is a good time to have a conversation about how we move forward in this pandemic about risk calculation, says Dr. Amesh Adaja, an infectious disease physician and a senior scholar at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. With COVID-19, I think we're at a point with immunity from prior infections, vaccines, home tests, and treatments that we can start to manage this way. We manage we manage other infectious diseases, he said. And finally, Biden himself went all in on Flexibility Tuesday when asked if Americans should mask up on planes. That's up to him, Biden declared during a visit to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. But his own White House, nonetheless, continues to require face coverings for those traveling with him on Air Force One, citing guidance from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, fam.
Fam, first of all, fam, I have to comment on the immunity calls. The calls that we should act on our own immunity, and now they're admitting the things we were talking about years ago now, right? Like the natural immunity aspect, that there's natural immunity. They're admitting that. They're admitting the fact that human beings should be allowed to administer their own concerns and have that choice. They're admitting to that. They're also admitting to doing this because the midterm elections are coming up. And obviously, like they're going to try to, as you said, fish for votes. It's just hilarious to me, all the admissions they're admitting. And it's hilarious to me to watch people, still the same COVIDian regime of these progressives, freak the hell out over this, when even the CDC has said what they said about the masks, and the effectiveness of it, and it's hilarious to me to watch them freak out and act like people are becoming executioners when they don't wear a mask. I mean, it's insane to me, because I was just on a plane, and the vast majority of people, of course, this is New York, were wearing a mask. Like in the airplane, in the airport, in the plane, I just walked in, without one, and you still get a few looks, but there were a few others, a few other people not wearing masks, and the airline people, a lot of them were still wearing masks, but some of them weren't. So it's just this whole thing where it's like this limbo, and some people are crying about it. The same people that were crying about, they wanted lockdowns, they wanted all this stuff. And they're saying that people don't care about the disabled, that people don't care about, but this is science, this is fact. It's not a matter of, it's just ridiculous. I have no patience for it anymore. You can call me unempathetic. If you're immunodeficient, that has nothing to do with whether your neighbor's wearing a mask or not. Like zero to do with it.
Sometimes what I really want to point out when it comes to a lot of this propaganda too from the mainstream media, and that's why I really do like reading this newspaper, because it just, they tell you so much of the BS, what they're trying to do, because they're still speaking so much in code. I think there's a point when so much of the lie, parts of the lie become so visible that you got to admit that you're wrong, but you still want to peddle your bullshit, because when you hear them say, well, now we have to move on and have the discussion talking about previous infections and the immunity that's built from that, but also from vaccines and therapies. And we understand the therapies they're going to push, right? Paxlovid, Molnupiravir, all the bullshit other than, the stuff that's really cheap, off patent, that really works, like ivermectin and oh, I'm sorry, I got it. My bad. And they still use words like still deadly pandemic. But the thing that really, really bothers me too as well is that it's still, everything is aimed towards making sure kids are still falling into all the boot protocols that are set in front of them, right? So there's still a lot of concerns. When you look at the mainstream media, not only in the newspaper, but on TV, they're still focusing on children. Here's a clip from CNN with Anderson Cooper and America's Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and he's looking up. And fam, also pay close attention to the whole, me and Steve, I think we talked about this, or maybe me and you talked about this, I can't remember, about now that Brian Stelter, he kind of introduced a whole kind of web streaming series that they're having on CNN now and stuff, because they're getting their ass kicked by a bunch of rookies and everything, like people like us on the internet, that they're trying to copy that formula to make it more look podcasty. So here's Anderson Cooper, oligarch boy, from his living room talking to Sanjay Gupta, who's in the second level, what do you call that, study of his house.
Hey everyone, welcome to Full Circle. I'm Anderson Cooper. Today, in some parts of the country, was the first day of school. It's only intensified concerns, obviously, about the Delta variant. For those who so far refused the vaccine, the effect of the variant on those already vaccinated, and how this all is going to impact our nation's kids, many of whom, of course, cannot get vaccinated, kids under 12. Add into this the debate over masks playing out in the White House and state houses and school board meetings across the nation. Many are experiencing a kind of whiplash after being told by the CDC that being vaccinated means they can feel safe not to mask up inside, to now the latest guidance from authorities. Take a look at a map here. The counties in red are considered high areas of transmission by the CDC. The orange are considered substantial risk of COVID-19 transmission. And they advise if you live in these areas to wear a mask inside, even if you're vaccinated. They account for nearly 80% of counties in the United States. It is certainly confusing. Thankfully, Dr. Sanjay Gupta is here to try to provide some clarity. Sanjay, thanks for being with us. So we asked viewers for questions via social media, and they certainly had a lot of them. So let's get right to our viewers. Okay. First, Jennifer wrote, mask mandates in schools have been outlawed in my state. I have an unvaccinated 8-year-old. I know I could send her to school in a mask, but I'm afraid she'll be one of the very few kids in a mask in a crowded classroom. How much protection would one masked kid have in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough situation, Jennifer. I mean, it would obviously be far more beneficial if there was the majority of people masked, everyone masked, preferably, certainly when they're indoors and the virus is, most likely to spread. There is data for Jennifer, although I have 3 kids as well. I know it'd be very challenging to tell your kid, the only kid to mask, because it's just challenging in that environment. But there is protection, to be clear, to answer your question, for the wearer of the mask as well, not just the people around the masked individual. So we know if you are masked, 80 to 90% protection, you want to wear a good high filtration mask. If everyone was wearing a mask, it'd be 96, 97% protection. So again, I empathize with Jennifer Anderson because, you want to do the right thing, and yet, your kid, you don't want your kid to be teased or whatever for being the only one wearing a mask.
But you're saying if you are wearing a mask, you yourself get 80% at least protection from that mask?
Yeah, so with the high filtration mask, there's been different studies looking at this, and I think we can show you some of the actual numbers because they've looked at various iterations of masks. They've looked at if it's knotted and tucked and things like that. But like with double masking, for example, the receiver, the person wearing it, would have 83% protection. Surgical mask and a cloth mask on top of it. The big thing with the cloth mask being on top of it is to really give better fit. You want to make sure you have good fit around the mouth area, around the nose area. That's really critical.
Okay.
Fam, you were saying as we're watching, like, where does he get his data from? And it's like, how can they not look at risk versus reward? Simple risk versus reward. We've had this conversation about masks, what it does for speech, what it does to children and their communication skills, right? Like, we're gonna have a whole friggin' decade, Steve says, of psychopaths trying to run this place because everybody was masked up all the time, not just the child wearing the mask, but the adult, you know what I'm saying? And how their brains are learning and so many things like, pneumonia, whatnot. You get sick from wearing these masks multiple times, not to mention that the cloth mask, 99% of them, right? Or the masks that are out there don't stop the spread of infection because it goes right through.
And who said that? The CDC themselves has cited that. The CDC has cited that even though the vaccines are safe and effective, and even though they were promoting masks, the CDC has also said that unless there are the N95 masks, they don't provide, this. And just because we're on YouTube, right? I'm going to refrain from saying what I think, because a lot of what they said though, you can look up yourself, and it's completely inaccurate. So.
How crazy it is that we're talking about this the day this broke in the newspaper, right now today. We're talking about current events, but we got to watch what we're saying. We got to walk on eggshells. It's bullstein. It really is. By the way, so Biden said that early in the morning, and people should decide for themselves at 2 p.m. It was like 11 a.m., whatever our time. This is on the East Coast, I guess. And then by 3:30, it changed his whole tune. A little video here from Twitter.
People continue to wear masks on planes.
That's up to them. I've not gotten any brief from the CDC. I don't know. Follow the science.
Follow the science, fam. By the way, you probably heard the snort hog over there. That's Gomez with a big snort. Yeah, follow the science, fam. I don't know if you saw Jim Brewer's video too, as well, when he was doing like stand up and he has an encounter with a young lady, and she starts screaming at him. He tries to explain stuff to them. She went running out of the theater saying, "He doesn't believe in science." That's what they're still saying. That's all they could say is like, "You don't believe in science. You don't believe in science." I mean, is this really fucking science? What Sanjay Gupta is fucking quoting over here? And like we talked about, what about the other effects of having to mask up? What it does to society? It dehumanizes us. We become fucking stormtroopers. It's terrible.
I can't. I will silence is interpret my silence, people.
Okay, when we go to Rockford only, Fee, remember this moment and come back and slay the dragon. So just to get you even more happier, I got your favorite doctor out there, Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA commissioner and whatnot. And once again, they make sure this guy comes on TV today as things are going down to make sure that he's got to put in his point of views on what to do once again. And a lot of people will follow suit, right? Here we go.
How you view the ventilation and everything else. It is an airplane with all the things that they've done, the cabin of an aircraft, versus, let's say, I don't know, we have IPOs here at the Nance. There's lots of people that are out in the lobby, and they're right next to each other. They're packed in there. And there was no mask mandate for that. Is an airplane, because it's recirculated air, is it better, is it more dangerous or less dangerous in terms of contracting germs than just a normal indoor setting where it's really crowded?
Yeah, look, this is the way I think about it. Your risk of contracting COVID if you don't have good baseline immunity, either through vaccination or prior infection, is proportional to the risk of the setting that you're in. And if you're in a confined space with poor air circulation with a lot of people, that's going to be higher risk than being in a confined space with poor air circulation with a few number of people versus an environment where there's good air circulation. An airplane, when it's in the air, has very good air circulation.
Okay.
The filtration systems on those airlines are very good. The riskiest part of the travel is probably when you're getting on and off the plane, when people are bunched together, the air filtration system's turned off, or you're standing in a confined space in the airport.
Scott, let's say you have a tight-fitting N95, K95, whatever it is. You have one of those on. What's your level of protection, and would it be significantly enhanced if you and every other person around you, is it better if you have it on tightly fitting and then every other person has it on tightly fitting? Is it worth mandating that for everyone, or should you feel pretty good if you decide to wear an N95?
Look, if everyone around you is wearing a high-quality mask, well, that's going to improve the overall safety of the environment. But if you have a good fitting mask, a high-quality mask on, you're wearing it well, you're going to afford yourself a high degree of protection. So people who feel vulnerable, if they continue to do that, are going to be able to protect themselves in that setting, even if other people aren't wearing masks. One-way masking does work. The exception is young children who can't wear high-quality masks, can't wear them well, so they're still going to be vulnerable in those settings. I mean, you know, I think one way to think about this is if you want to provide yourself some protection on the journey, wear the mask when you're getting on and off the plane, a high-quality mask, because for brief periods of time you can wear it well. Take it off mid-flight. When the air filtration system is on, when there's good air circulation, that's a lower risk point of the travel.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah. By the way, fam, I pulled that clip from the main thing. The victim here is the children. Who's going to protect children now, right? But it's about children. I mean, there was a lot of other things he said too as well. He made sure he pointed out that, you know, if you're vaccinated, you're still safer. You know, it's still one-way masking still works, so wear it anyways. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people are going to hear that and feel that and going to say, okay, I'm going with it. You know, they're going to be the virtue signaling. I'm going to mask up for the greater society, even if the non-science political people say that you don't have to do it anymore, fam.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, do whatever the hell you want to do. But just, I mean, the people that are freaking out about people not wearing it, to me, are really being obnoxious here. Like, we are not at a point where we should have to. And I think people freaking out and blaming their neighbors are doing exactly what the establishment wants. I mean, this is what it's about. It's about turning people against each other, and nobody's telling you not to wear a mask. You can wear a mask if you want to wear a mask. I mean, you know, some people might think it's dumb, and some people might think you're, you know, brainwashed, whatever the hell. They can have that opinion. You can wear your mask if you ever so feel like it. But for me, it's like trying to force other people to behave a way you deem is correct, in spite of all the evidence and facts, even in spite of your government backtracking because it's an election time. Like, it's so silly.
So I'm biting my tongue. I'm going to say something when we go to Rockfin, only I'm not going to say something right now because I was going to comment on that. But even though yesterday the federal judge lifted the mask mandate for transit, YouTube had certain things within their bylaws that said, when you talk about masks, to be careful. So I don't think that changes. So I'm just going to wait until we get on over to Rockfin to say my opinions, because I'm pretty sure they'll say whatever. Some best Cal, is that what it is? Best Bell. You know how people started freaking out. We talked about this. Thrilled to announce I'm going to smoke cigarettes on my next Delta flight because I'm not really worried about the health risk. And Delta puts my personal freedom first. There they go, fam. They start freaking out. I'm sure there's a lot more of these out there.
There's a lot more.
Here's Jonathan Reiner. Cases are rising across the country and are up 50% over the last 2 weeks. Assumingly, only 1/4 of the cases are actually reported, probably even lower. There are now more daily cases than at the peak of Delta in September. If mask mandates on planes were needed then, why aren't they needed now, fam?
You should ask yourself that question. If his data is correct, which I don't even think it is, but let's even say if it is, why are they arbitrarily demanding yes masks and no masks? Gee, does it have anything to do with the political things happening right now? Perhaps you should ask yourself then if this is about health and science, or rather about control and politics.
Valerie Jarrett, Oz's favorite, Barack Obama, or it was Clinton, I believe. Associate, wearing my mask no matter what non-scientist tells me I can do.
And she's in a car. I mean, you're asked to get made fun of at this point. You're asking to get made fun of. Jesus Christ. Anyway.
Oh God. Anything else, Oz? Do you want to add anything to this? I think you should just be careful if you do add something to this, but yeah. We live in a cartoon.
Move along.
Let's move along, Sam, for the sake of time, because this is a long section.
Oh my God.
Not this one, the following one. This kind of goes along with the whole liberal mindset and these people, because the way they are with COVID is the same way they are with Ukraine, Russia. They've become advocates against Russians, advocates against Russian culture. They've become just completely embracing of this, or dismissing the full-on fascism. And like I said, when I feel like people say, you're a Nazi every other 2 seconds. No, these people are actual Nazis. And one of these people, of course, one of these vile people is Sarah Ashton-Cirillo. And Sarah Ashton-Cirillo is a trans woman who was previously known as a he and had another name. And this person called for death to journalists, to more than one journalist. So I tweeted about it. A lot of people tweeted about it. But let's just go over some of the things she said. So I said the so-called journalist and Democratic operative is not only cheering and hoping Gonzalo Lira's capturing and death, but also for Patrick Lancaster from PL News Today. She also called Russians orcs. Orcs is a derogatory name used to call the Azov battalion have been calling Russians. It just says that they're ugly, that they're primitive. That's what it means, essentially. So here are a few of her wonderful tweets. She had this one where she said, incredible news from Kharkiv. Reports are that Chilean-Russian spy, real Gonzalo Lira, has been captured in Kharkov. And first of all, she's calling him a Russian spy without any sort of evidence. As a journalist, I would think that would be, uncalled for. He is allegedly a Russian saboteur posing as a journalist to destroy Ukraine. Congrats to Ukrainian security services. She means congrats to the Nazis. Hashtag stand with Ukraine. Then somebody says, excellent news. This Kremlin-paid spy was spreading lies about Ukraine even before the war. A shame for Chileans and real journalists. Well deserved. Patrick, you're next. So this other person commented, was like threatening Patrick, and she said, yes, Patrick must go. She is blatantly calling for the assassination of a journalist that has been providing one of the most amazing coverage of Ukraine on the ground. I would love to have him on the show. He's been constantly on the go. I think he was on Gray Zone, I think once, but he's been putting out videos. And of course, guys, doing this work in Ukraine, is extremely dangerous. Anybody doing that work should be protected, and we should be fearful of anything happening to them, especially if they're showing the truth of what's happening in Ukraine. And Patrick has been doing this on the ground work, interviewing people, exposing a lot of the Western propaganda that has been pushed by the US. In addition to Patrick, of course, now there were several other journalists there from RT. There was a few from Telesur, and now Eva Bartlett is back in Ukraine, in Donetsk. And we have an update from Eva, who posted some of her conversations with Gonzalo, but I want to send my shout outs and my appreciation for the risk that they're taking, because there are several journalists that have been disappeared recently. So this is disgusting, right? And then she continues. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying this is sad. I'm just thinking about, what Gonzalo had to go through too. We mentioned the Daily Beast the other day. This is messed up. This is not normal behavior. This is child behavior. This is terrible.
It's psychopathic behavior. Like,
this is crazy. Yeah. And then did you see your little video that we put in the chat the other day with her? It was like trying to make herself the victim. Oh, now I'm getting doxxed and whatnot. And you know what she's going to say too as well? Well, when I said he must go, I just meant he must leave Ukraine. That's it. I wasn't advocating for his capture and his death. Yes, you were.
Yeah. Gaslighters. So this is what she said kind of in reply. So they're saying I denounce Gonzalo Lira and turn him in. Nope, but we can dream. After all, he is responsible for the deaths of Ukrainian civilians and the destruction of Ukraine while defiling the term journalist. Real Gonzalo Lira is an enemy of freedom. She sounds like a neocon, first of all.
Responsible for any deaths. How is he responsible for any death? What is Gonzalo Lira done that he could be responsible for one freaking death?
Yeah. Like, and defiled journalism, like defiled it. I think the only people defiling journalism are the people spreading propaganda on behalf of the State Department and the Democratic Party, whatever factions of that. And I'm going to show you her ties to that. She also said Ukrainians everywhere are focused on destroying Russian orcs in Ukraine. Here's when she uses the word orcs, and destroying Putin's war criminals, not gender. Only Russian trolls are interested in gender. Because she quote tweeted because somebody said, I would bet Nazis have double standards, good trans and bad trans. Like, this is the thing that irritates the hell out of me. You have some of these people that put in their bio, I'm trans, I'm this, she, them, they, that, whatever the hell they put in their bio. I have zero problem with who you have sex with. I have zero problem with what you identify as. Zero issue whatsoever. I look at people as people. My problem is some of these people exploit whatever, sexual orientation, whatever gender desire they have, and they use it to exploit for politics and for political clout and for political gain, and to also be able to say whatever the hell they want and be whatever kind of assholes they want to be in order to get away with it. Because when they get criticized, they're anti-trans, or they're anti-LGBTQ, or they're pro-racist, or whatever issue it may be. We've seen this, of course, used by the Democratic Party, and this person is a Democratic Party operative, so I don't put it past them. We've also seen the Democratic Party recruit from these very same sectors. We've also seen the intelligence community recruit specifically intersectional types of people that fall into the category of identity politics to exploit it. That's my problem. And that's what I think is happening a lot in this particular category. And a lot of people won't say that because they get a lot of pushback. But I'm just saying, like, there is an exploitation happening right now with that sector. And it's not just that identity. It's several identities that are being used to exploit. So this is a tweet from this account. I believe it was... I had it there. I don't know if it's there anymore, but there it is. It's Fiero Fortis. So this account, Fiero Fortis, posted in Spanish a description of several things related to Sierra. And I'm going to just go over some of it right now. So this person said, the disappearance of Gonzalo Lira in Kharkov has put in the spotlight strange character who arrived in Ukraine at the beginning of March and who since then on Twitter at Sarah Ashton LV, because she's in Vegas, she's from Vegas, has incited hatred and violence against Russians and independent journalists, wishing them death. In 2015, he was in Europe, mixed between foreign fighters going to Syria and refugees coming from Syria. Then in the US, he infiltrated the Proud Boys movement. Now he is in Kharkov, but with a different name and gender. So you can see when she was a he. And interesting that they were also in Syria on behalf of the State Department Syrian narrative, while people like Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett were actually in Syria talking about what was really happening and you know, the lies. So the Daily Beast happened to write a nice article on her while they wrote a smear piece on Gonzalo. So they wrote this piece in June of last year, right? And this piece kind of exposes the kind of operative Sarah is. This undercover operative says she recruited the Proud Boys for the GOP, a transgender poker player and progressive activist who went undercover and cozied up to the right-wing extremists, a state Republican Party desperate to see Donald Trump win, a Vegas-based GOP consultant, the Proud Boys. This is a bizarre story connecting a far-right paramilitary group to an effort in Nevada to pressure election officials to overturn the 2020 election results. Interesting, she infiltrated a far-right paramilitary group, the Proud Boys, and is now in Ukraine with far-right actual paramilitary Banderite fascists, and thinks that the two are completely different. I find that extremely interesting. So this is from the article. In the months leading up to the 2020 election, Sarah Ashton-Cirillo, a self-described progressive activist, embedded herself in GOP circles as part of her research for a book on right-wing extremism. What she found was a Republican consultant desperate to team the Proud Boys up with the Nevada GOP in order to challenge ballots and flip the presidential election. And this last bit points out how in 2019, she told the Daily Beast that being transgender had helped her float between different worlds. Quote, some people can't comprehend the duality, she said. However, once you've fought through the pain and anguish of a gender transition, everything else is simple, both mentally and physically. You lose the sense of fear and realize anything is possible. The far left and far right share tremendous grievances with the system in which we live, she said. However, only the far right would be so blinded by hate for our republic that they would have allowed my infiltration to happen. Ultimately, their need to believe their own lies and falsehoods allowed me to slide right into their narrative. So she's gloating about how she was able to infiltrate the GOP and get all this information from them. She also was able to turn a person that was running as a Democrat, and then she convinced this woman to run as a Republican, and she won her election running as a Republican, but really she was a Democrat. So this person is an operative. This is what an operative does. They go undercover. They, sow discord within an organization. They sell themselves to whatever the highest bidder is. The Proud Boys have been infiltrated, of course, by the feds multiple times. This isn't anything new, but I find it interesting that this operative who wrote a book about right-wing extremism is literally helping Nazis in Ukraine and is wishing for death to journalists.
Mm-hmm. Poker player, huh, fam?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? I find that very interesting.
Might run into her one day, huh?
Maybe.
Oh,
maybe.
dude, that's her drug. Well, now it's, obviously she said going back and forth, slipping back and forth into different areas, whatnot. That's got to be some type of drug, getting your kicks off doing that, and also playing poker. So interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you're not going to talk about this because you might not be comfortable with it, but I think her saying that is extremely manipulative, especially using the issue of being transgender, because what that does is it turns a lot of people against trans people, which is not my intent, and it's not the intent of most people. But the weaponization of these identities does exactly that. And also the weaponization of these identities is extremely manipulative, and it's being used by the intelligence community to reach a certain political agenda and a political narrative. And it's very clear that this person is weaponizing that. It's not a genuine thing. And I hate that that's happening, because it's just so manipulative. And this person pointed out that the journalists in conflict zones are prohibited from carrying weapons, but Ukrainian troops allowed Michael Johns / Sarah Ashton to pose with a machine gun and hand grenade. And of course, these are the Ukrainian troops. And she also said in an interview with Vozwire, Ashton-Cirillo stated that her entrance into this world was not exactly as an undercover spy, at least not at first. It doesn't mean it isn't now. And just overall, I just wanted to put what Eva's last contact with Gonzalo was. She said, you guys—
When was this, by the way? Do you know?
This was the 15th.
Okay.
Yeah. So she said, I hope you're able to get some sleep. And he said, thank you, Eva. I really appreciate it. Not really. The crazies are rolling around in the streets in Kharkov. Their cars have taped up license plates, and one look at the guys inside and you know they're trouble. So these cars had, like, there was no way to track them because you couldn't see their license plate. And she said, yes, yikes. I imagine you're staying close to home then. And he said, everyone is. No one sane steps outside. Everyone is hunkered down in basements. And whenever possible, and whenever anyone has to go outside, they walk as quickly as possible to their destination. And everyone gives everyone else a wide berth on the sidewalks because everyone has become completely paranoid. So he's telling her about his experience there. And he said, I've seen the Russian POWs and I've seen the Ukrainian POWs. And the Ukrainians clearly look like they have been taking very heavy drugs for an extended period. They have that hollow-eyed look. It's hard to explain, but I've seen enough people come off of amphetamines, cocaine, and other uppers to spot it. And then she responds, even that British guy who was recently captured kind of has that look. The next day, April 16th morning, how are you? Did you manage to get some sleep? I'm heading south for a couple of days, got my accreditation. Worried about you so is much of Twitter. Checking in. And so
Nothing.
They haven't heard from him. And that is worrisome. And, somebody posted something stupid about Gonzalo, like, he's not a leftist, he's not a communist or whatever.
We talked about it in the chat, right? Like the whole thing, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't care. This is still wrong. What they're doing to him, what they're doing, smearing him is wrong. If I disagree with Gonzalo politically, if he said some things that I completely find whatever gross or completely disagree with, that does not justify what these fascists are doing to a lot of people, what the media is doing, smearing him, what they potentially could be doing to him. The fact that a lot of journalists have disappeared, none of it justifies it, even if these people don't agree with us on every single thing. I think that's ridiculous. You become that which what you hate if you think it justifies some sort of like death call, right?
The progressive left, the wokest left right there that thinks is okay. Gonzalo doesn't have the same ideology as me, and he uses crass language and he goes over the line, so he gets what he deserves. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He wouldn't classify the Azov battalion as Nazis. He only said that they were just really bad. Like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're a perfect fucking human being to the point you can sit there and advocate that a guy gets what he deserves just because you don't agree with him ideologically. Enough of your bullshit woke to lift yourself up crap. Put a little blue ribbon around your freaking chest and go stare in the mirror, pal. Don't bring your shit over here. It's sad. It's sad what he might have gone through. You know what I'm saying? We can't speculate right now because from what I understand, the person who put up a lot of the stuff about Gonzalo being off has now kind of changed his tune and said, oh, that wasn't me. I didn't say that and whatnot. Really hasn't clarified his moonwalking. So we can't speculate, but completely disgusting. You know what I'm saying? And just like her, Sarah Kristen, the same other person that we're talking about, that other socialist and stuff like that, they hate Gonzalo for the same freaking reason, so they can justify their existence and how better they are.
Yeah, no, it's gross. And yeah, they become as fascistic as anything. When you say that somebody got what they sought from Nazis, you're now justifying Nazism. You're blaming the victims of Nazism, even if we don't know what's happened or not. The fact that you're saying that it's okay because you don't like this person, you know, I wouldn't wish my worst enemy on the Azov battalion and on these people. The way they have been conducting war crimes, the way they have been completely just so psychopathic in their treatment of human beings. And at some point, I think people are going to have to come to terms with themselves and see what really are they cheering for in terms of this conflict, because it's one thing to not have all the facts, but it's one thing when everything's out there, the war crimes that are being committed by Azov, the years of war crimes that have been committed in the last 8 years since 2014 Maidan coup and all of that, and completely just ignoring that and saying, well, because they were spewing Russian propaganda. Sorry, that doesn't justify it at all.
I see, Oz, you put up another tweet over here. It says, no indication he is deceased. Scott Ritter has 0 sources here, and he is wrong. Is Scott Ritter saying, because can you see the original Scott Ritter tweet real quick? Can you get that up for us to see what Scott Ritter is saying? And by the way, the audacity of this woman, Sarah Ashton-Cirillo, to sit there and say Scott Ritter has no sources. I mean, how high are you? I mean, what are you smoking? Because I want some of that. Scott Ritter has no sources. The ex-UN weapons inspector, you know, that called out, blew the whistle on what was going on in Iraq has no sources. I mean, you got to be freaking kidding me. Oh, you're a source, Sarah Ashton. You're breaking news, honey. Please. Okay, whatever. I guess Scott Ritter has said something. Why can't you get it? I'll go to his Twitter.
Does his Twitter suspended?
Okay.
Yeah, this is probably from Telegram. So, yeah.
Okay.
Anywho.
I'm curious probably to see what he said. I mean.
Yeah, I think Scott was saying that he was, but yeah, they're speculating until, you know, we have confirmation, and that's that. But my whole point in that section was to show that it's wrong for people to desire somebody be eliminated just because of their political. But that's where we're at right now. That's how we didn't get there just now. We got there with the pandemic and how people felt about the unvaccinated not getting healthcare, not that they should not have housing, that they shouldn't have access to restaurants and food and all this stuff. That's priming for this, and that's kind of where we're at as a society. And if you don't stop yourself from going down that path because somebody disagrees with you, you know, you're going to reach this level of fascism. That is fascism. And of course, it's definitely started way before that with the whole, you know, deplorable situation where if somebody voted for Trump, they were automatically like, you know, cast aside as somebody that should have never had an opinion on anything ever. And that's not, you know, my defense necessarily of their opinion, but it's my defense of people being able to have one without being, you know, told that they should die or something. Like, I think, yeah.
Disgusting. Super Ray from TD, thank you so much for the Super Ray contribution. As always, appreciate it on the couch. Cultist Demon's back. How you doing, Cultist Demon? I am irritated about China still pursuing, the zero COVID policy 2 years out, but maybe they know something we don't and are just preparing for the big one. Or does COVID affect Chinese people worse or something? I wish China would be more open and transparent about what is going on. We're going to talk about that, and I don't know how long we're going to stay on just YouTube only. We're going to have to dip eventually off and go on to Rockfin only. It says, Lily Gaskill, thank you so much for the Super Ray contribution. That seems like a new name. I don't know if you've tipped us before, Lily, but thank you so much. These super rays mean a lot to us. They really do help us out. You guys are awesome. Love my fam. We love you back. Cult Steven says again, COVID question. The virus is obviously microscopic, but it has to have a carrier like spittle or droplets or even surgical masks would limit the spread of it, right? Well, when we go to Rock Finale, I'll have an opinion about that. Cult Steven, don't make me forget. Let me write down.
It's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of fact. So
when we get on Rock Finale, I'll say something. Yeah. There's a new movie out there, fam. There's a new movie out there. John House, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch, fam. That is nice. 118 people hanging out on the Rock Fin. About 300 plus hanging on the YouTubes. Pasta, check your DMs. My Twitter DM. From Farron who? Farron Balanced. Why am I not following Farron? Farron, you get a follow. My bad. I'm a bad friend. Okay, yeah. It says, do you want me to give it to you, Oz, or do you have it? All right, really quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it inside the folder. 2 seconds. Guys, thank you so much for the super raise. It does mean a lot to us. It helps us out tremendously, and I really do appreciate it. Oz, I put it on the bottom of 44.
You put the link.
Yep, Oz is already on it. Thank you, Farron. Farron Balanced. So it says Scott Ritter was reporting that Gonzalo Lira was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by the Kraken unit, part of the Azov battalion. Sarah Ashton LV reporting he was captured in Kharkov on April 18th. And this is from the real Gonzalo's last tweet on April 15th. When reports emerged that Gonzalo Lira, a Chilean social media influencer who raised in Kharkov, Ukraine, and who published online content critical of the Ukrainian government, was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by the Kraken unit, part of the Azov battalion affiliated with the USS, which is also known as the SBU. The West is silent. Free speech isn't a one-way street. To remain silent in the murder of Gonzalo Lira is to be complicit in his death and the deaths of all journalists who pursue the truth, even if it runs counter to the mainstream narrative. Critical thinking should be a death sentence. Unfortunately for Gonzalo Lira, it seems it was, and that was from the real Scott Ritter. He's saying that this Azov, this Kraken unit from the Azov battalion got him. And then, Sarah then said he doesn't know, Scott has no connections here. He has no sources here. It's not confirmed that he's deceased. And obviously she's moonwalking on the situation because she probably regrets opening up her stupid mouth and saying the things she said. Because then she immediately went into playing the victim and saying she was getting doxxed and whatnot. While she's also pointing the finger at another journalist there saying he must go. So, yeah, it's some sick shit, fam. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't think there's any real confirmation. From what I read, yeah, he said he was citing reports. So I don't know if he himself said that. He's sort of saying it seems like it was. He's not saying this is for sure either. So, we'll see. We're all hoping for the best. But, it's scary. It's sad, especially when other people we know are there and are going to Ukraine. So it's, yeah.
By the way, Farron Balance said, Pasta, it's Farron, the former RT American primetime anchor. Thank you, Farron, for watching the show. It's awesome that you're here. Check your Tweeter DMs. I call them tweeters instead of Twitters because I'm a boomer. I sent you Scott Ritter's post as well as Sarah's reply to me. She was the one clapping back at me. Check it out. Keep up the great work, you two. Thank you so much, Farron.
Thank you, Farron.
Yes, that's awesome. And thank you for getting that to me. I'm glad we were able to post that up there. And you know what? Scott Ritter's word goes a long way with me, right? Before the intranet was all popular and everything was going down and whatnot, Scott Ritter stuck his neck out and talked about the fact that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq when everybody else was saying, let's go, let's go, let's go. So, like I said, Scott Ritter's word carries a lot of weight with me, fam.
Yeah. I don't think he was confirming 100% anything, but we'll see.
Either do I, but I don't know. We'll see. Like, we shouldn't speculate. You're right. Fam, let's go into the next section. You want to go to Rockfin only?
No, I want to start with.
Okay.
Yeah.
You let me know when we're ready to go over there, and I think it's good. So.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Don't worry. I'll let you know. Most of this information, guys, you're going to want to sit for this because this is a perspective that most haven't really, they haven't really touched, right? So I'm going to go ahead and talk about this perspective. There's been very few people talking about this. Kind of goes along with what Cultist Demon just kind of talked about. So let's get to it. Let's talk about, is zero COVID Shanghai lockdown an overreach by the CCP or something more? Is there something underlying happening? I mean, the numbers aren't there to demand for an immediate lockdown like this. This is really weird. Okay, off the bat, I thought this was really strange that this was happening, especially when you put Russia, Ukraine together. So this is an article from Emmanuel Pastrick, and I thought it was a really, really great breakdown as to what I have been gathering is actually happening in Shanghai. So I'm not going to read every single thing, but I'm going to start reading this first paragraph here. So you guys can find this at https://circlesandsquares.asia/2022-0417. And on April 15th is when this was written. So he says, corporate newspapers and social media have been flooded with horrific images of the Shanghai lockdown for the last week. A massive enterprise that has confined millions of Chinese to their homes for weeks and has resulted in the implementation of severe restrictions on access to basic supplies. Images of citizens yelling from their apartments in frustration or screaming heartfelt protests and moving soliloquies. Videos of drones and robots patrolling the empty streets of Shanghai present us with a terrifying vision of the totalitarian rule by technology that so many have predicted. The underlying message is that China is the source of this nightmare. So the story that has been put out, but it hasn't been denied by the Communist Party, he says, is so extreme as to invite ridicule. A new, quote, zero tolerance policy for COVID-19, which is a bogus non-existing disease in their opinion, in the first place, was imposed on all Shanghai citizens. First on the east side of the Huangpu River from March 28th, and then for the entire city from April 1st. Supposedly, all citizens will be tested for COVID-19. According to media reports, only 26,087 new cases of COVID-19 have been found. And of those, only 914 were symptomatic. And there were no pictures of bodies on the ground, as was the case in the Wuhan at the end of 2019. That is to say that the justifications for this lockdown are so absurd as to make the entire process partial, perhaps an action intended to show citizens that they must do exactly what they are told to do, no matter how ridiculous or groundless the premises are. So I agree, there hasn't really been bodies shown, there hasn't been, the case numbers aren't there, right? And so he continues to talk about how the Western media is pushing the fact that this is the Chinese Communist Party doing it, and not just the Western media, but also the Republican, the right is pushing that, oh, this is what we're going to turn into if we allow communism to take over. You see it at the defeat mandates protests, you see it everywhere, right? He talks about Jack Posobiec, who posted a tweet blaming communism and saying this is what the CCP is doing to the 26 million people of Shanghai. The Human Rights Watch condemned China for its human rights violations in Shanghai on April 6th, saying that the Chinese government should respect the right to health and other basic rights in its response to COVID-19 surge in the country. But they didn't talk about other policies that have been happening. So the issue he talks about in the next slide on 49 is that while they're blaming communism, right? They're blaming this lockdown on communism. There is no major historical citation to where this can be found in the Chinese communist tradition, meaning before there has never been a shutdown like this in the Chinese communist tradition. And he says, quote, no part of the imposition of techno-fascism can be traced back to the cause of Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai for class struggle and for resistance to imperialism. The model for the Shanghai lockdown, it turns out, is the lockdown of Boston after the Boston Marathon bombing on April 15, 2013, exactly 9 years ago. On that occasion, the US federal government, specifically the FBI, used a murky charge of a terrorist attack about which serious doubt remains as an excuse to lock down vast sections of the city of Boston and confine citizens to their homes while armed police patrolled the streets. I vaguely recall that, but you know, the whole point that they're pointing out is that this is more similar to that lockdown and the way it is organized. And he's questioning, is this being organized by the same people that organized the Boston lockdown and similar lockdowns around the world, and not by the Chinese Communist Party, or just not primarily? Kind of saying that there might be people that have sold out and that are like helping this whole thing. And I'm also going to mention how Shanghai is the perfect area for this, because Shanghai is the most liberal / Western type of city in China. And it is just perfect for the incoming connections to the West and a lot of oligarchs and billionaires. And so he also talks about how there's like all these suicide videos that have been put out in media, but it's hard to assume that they're real or not. It's hard to like define, are these videos real or not? Are they being manufactured? We don't know. He talked about on slide 51, a popular video featuring a dog-shaped robot that kind of looks like the Boston Dynamics Spot Mini robot, and that it was on the streets going around with a microphone on its back, telling the people of Shanghai to stay inside, and said that anyone who looked at the video with critical eyes had to be doubtful. The speaker was carelessly strapped to the back of the robot with barricade tape in what appears to be a careless stunt, and it was most certainly not representative of government policy. He also said that the giveaway that this lockdown has silent partners who had nothing to do with the CCP bureaucracy was the constant harping in the Western media on the suffering of animals in Shanghai. So this was a video, I don't know if you saw it post up, but it was a video of like a bunch of cats and dogs being like rounded up and put into like trash bins, and they were injured and all of that. A bunch of people were sending that video out. A bunch of, even some of my friends were like, what the hell is going on? This is absolutely wrong. So it was images of live cats rounded up and put in bags for disposal that were pasted all over the internet. And the Western media has just been entirely focused on that. And he says, although the video certainly was disturbing, I dare horrified Americans to watch a video of factory-scale slaughterhouses in the United States for even a few minutes. He continues to talk about the cruelty to animals, how it is a standard operation to demonize Russia in the Ukraine. For example, a call by Soy Dog co-founder John Daly for help to rescue the dogs and cats of Ukraine has been broadly circulated in the US. There are numerous indications that the Shanghai lockdown is being marketed for Western audiences as the equivalent of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The narrative presented is of a cruel totalitarian communist government in China that oppresses the poor citizens of Shanghai who yearn to be free from these unreasonable, quote, zero COVID restrictions, but no suggestion is offered that COVID restrictions themselves are wrong to begin with. The mainstream media reported that there are videos of locked up residents chanting, "We want food and we want freedom" in a video, and that they were out in their balconies, but the videos just seem too perfect, he says. So I don't know, Pasta, if you want to comment on anything said so far. I can't hear you. You're muted?
I'm sorry. I said there's a few things I want to jump into right away and talk about really quick, because this is interesting, because we're getting into some really, I would say, somewhat new territory as far as how we can put on our critical thinking hat and how we can legitimately criticize China, whatnot, to have like, do two things at one time. I mean, the whole tactics of, once again, saying, oh, the dog was just fake, or we've seen the drones before. I guess you can downplay those and say that was fake, whatnot, too, as well. And this whole kind of mentality that, like, okay, yeah, look, China's doing this, but look how bad, the United States is when it comes to this, when it comes to that and stuff. And it's really kind of wandering into that whataboutism kind of territory. Like, yeah, we get it. We speak out against the United States imperialist government every frigging day. We understand how bad they are. Does that make it okay for China to start doing stuff that might not be on the high level of, human rights abuses and stuff and whatnot? But I'm saying, they still are doing something. They're still possibly overreaching, and whatnot, in this crazy authoritarian way. I mean, at what point can we legitimately criticize China? Because we're right in between there, right? Like, we don't think China's good or bad. We got our eye on China. You know what I'm saying? We're definitely looking at them, and we know, I get it. There's a bunch of people out there that try to blame China for everything. Steve told me he went on a Union of the Wanted a couple weeks ago, and they were trying to direct everything for China for everything. You put on Steve Bannon for a second, it's China everything. You know what I'm saying? It's China this, China that. They're pulling the strings. I get it. But there's some of us over here in critical thinking land that say, well, at what point can you legitimately criticize and say that, hey, man, maybe China's overreaching over here? Because at the end of the day, fam, it's Omicron. It's freaking Omicron. Right? It's not like my 81-year-old mother, had a day and a half of serious symptoms. She didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. It's Omicron, and I don't want to hear this whole talk about, okay, and I've mentioned this before, they're legitimately treating people. They're giving them chloroquine. We're on Rockfin only or no?
Yeah, we're still on YouTube. I didn't say we're on Rockfin.
Can we boot over to Rockfin, or do you want to finish up?
Let me see how much, because none of this is really, you know what? Let me finish up my part of the section and then we can go on.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But anyways, just to tie up my whole statement there, fam, and I'm wondering what you have to say about this. And I know Steve's got a lot to say about this too as well. Is at what point can you legitimately criticize China for overreaching? And we understand that there's a whole bunch of people out there that at the end of the day, there was an earthquake in the middle of the Pacific, China. A volcano erupted, in freaking Siberia, China. They blame China for everything, and it's ridiculous, and I get it, but there has to be an in-between ground over there.
Yeah, I'm not saying there isn't. I think there is, but I'm saying it's not just a matter of what this article is saying, and what I believe to be true is that this isn't the entire, this isn't like the Chinese Communist Party, that there is an infiltration happening, that within this nation state of China, there are people that are the ones that are pushing, and that is coming primarily from the West via technology, and that they made the Chinese welcome technology naively, thinking that this technology they could use to advance in the world, and are like, coincidentally, this technology, or non-coincidentally, obviously, this technology is being used to push what the Western agenda more than anything, and to blame the ideology of communism for this thing. Not saying that there's no blame at all, but I'm saying that it's not as like, oh, China, the Communist Party is doing this, therefore communism is bad. That is too easy of an equation, and that's perfect for the right narrative, the right-wing narrative that they've been trying to push, that we're going to become communism, we're going to become China. This isn't about the technology that is being used in China with those robot dogs and stuff is coming from the West. That's not coming from the Communist Party. They never had any access to that technology. They've never had a history of lockdowns. We've had a history of lockdowns. We've had a history of all of this. That is the perspective that I'm trying to introduce here. It's not as clear cut as like, ooh, like, they're just authoritarian. Where did that authoritarianism come from? We continue. So he says the Shanghai lockdown must be seen first in proper geopolitical perspective. China has been subject to high-level pressure from D.C. over the last 2 months in an effort to thwart any possible cooperation with the Russian Federation since Russian troops entered Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden warned the People's Republic of China on March 18th in a conversation with Xi Jinping that there would be serious consequences for China if it offered any support for Russia, economic or specifically military. And Jen Psaki said that he made clear what the implication and consequences would be if China provides material support to Russia as it conducts brutal attacks against Ukraine cities and its civilians. And just 3 days later, on March 21st, China Eastern Airlines flight, this is something I completely missed. China Eastern Airlines flight 5735 was heading for a smooth landing at the Guangzhou International Airport when it suddenly plunged inexplicably into a nosedive. The cause of the crash has yet to be explained, even 3 weeks later. Many Chinese believe the arguments made in videos posted on Weibo and elsewhere soon after the incident that the crash was the result of a remote hijacking, similar to the 9/11 crashes probably conducted by the United States. The story was confirmed by the American intelligence investigative blog State of the Nation. Moreover, the egregious decision to include a 7-member team from the United States in the formal investigation of this domestic crash suggests something a bit unusual. So there was this crash. They still don't know how it happened. They included a U.S. 7-member team in this investigation. It's just really weird that the U.S. would get involved. And then on March 28th, the Shanghai Municipal People's Government, not the central government in Beijing, launched a radical COVID-19 zero tolerance policy. So the call didn't come from Beijing. And if you know China, everything politically comes from Beijing. If intelligence operatives for the US were looking to give China its own Ukraine and to find a new field for the troublemaking that they funded in Hong Kong previously, Shanghai was a logical choice. Shanghai is riddled with global financial interests, with the head offices, or certainly the major branch for all major multinational investment banks and multinational corporations located there. Their impact on the Chinese economy remains immense. Shanghai has a history of over 100 years as a center for global capital with a parasitic relationship to the rest of the nation. It was Shanghai, after all, that offered extraterritorially to citizens from imperial powers until the 1940s. So Shanghai has a history of working with the West that does not exist elsewhere. So Shanghai also has the most extreme special economic zone policies of any city in China, policies that allow foreign corporations to engage in a broad range of activities without the authorization of the government. As part of its drive to meet the demands of multinational corporations, the Shanghai government has privatized services and promoted technological solutions to just about everything. Shanghai has been so enthusiastic in adopting smart grids, 5G, online governance, and automation that it won the top-ranked globally as smart city from Juniper Research this year. Shanghai has rolled out the red carpet for global finance, giving special privileges to select institutional investors. So they've just been allowing and permitting investment banks to create their own, quote, wealth management joint ventures. So they've been really like open to Western influence. This is completely different than the rest of China. And they talk about billionaire Ma Yun, or Jack Ma, if you guys remember him, who took a lot of funding from Goldman Sachs. He was also involved in the Hong Kong protest. And he created this American investment sort of global marketing and distribution giant called Alibaba that was very similar to Amazon. And he's been very much anti-China. He's been used by the West to promote like all this anti-China rhetoric. And he's popular among globalists. And of course, he is a member of the board of trustees of the World Economic Forum. So do these ties to China and the WEF exist? Absolutely. Are people within the communist government working with the World Economic Forum? Absolutely. But it doesn't seem like it's a one, it's everybody. So he talks about how Ma established the Ant Group, which is also an institution that wants to create an unregulated banking system. And then he also talks about the American billionaires that have interest in China, like Steven Schwarzman, the CEO of a private equity firm, Blackstone. And he says that Steven Schwarzman bought off many of the government officials in the Chinese Communist Party with his money, especially the more than $100 million he gave to establish, among other things, the prestigious Schwarzman Scholars Program at Tsinghua University. Another American billionaire in China is John Thornton, founder of John L. Thornton China Center at Brookings Institute, and is a member of the International Advisory Council of the China Investment Corporation. And he's increasingly pushing for foreign influence in China's financial sector. So those are the money ties that are there. Are there money ties? Yes, to the communist members being bought up. But so the corporate media, of course, is using this to blame China, right? They're saying, oh, what's happening in Shanghai is affecting economics. And I mean, it is. And they're blaming the delays in production, the delivery of electronics, automobiles, and other household goods that are produced and shipped through or dependent on parts of Shanghai. Although the disruption is true, he says, there is every reason to believe that this situation will be exploited and exaggerated to justify efforts by the super rich to destroy the global economy further and to impoverish the Earth's citizens. Combining a Ukraine crisis that justifies the sudden scarcity of agricultural goods, raw materials, natural gas, and manufactured goods with a Shanghai crisis that shuts down global trade offers globalists an opportunity to explain just about any disruption. I mean, this is just so clear to me. It just, you have Ukraine, you have that failure, that ongoing failure that you have geopolitically happening. Then you have China. Now they're going to try Taiwan again. They have Shanghai. They have this sort of, we don't want to be like the communist Chinese, and we already have them vilified, just like we have Russia vilified. The two nations are honestly working together in terms of economics. This seems to me like another attempt to expand global surveillance. And I'm going to finish up and I'll hand it right off to you and we can go on Rockman only. He notes some solutions to this, what needs to be done. He talks about how the Chinese have been subject to their part in the Great Reset, serving as guinea pigs for social credit systems that allow for constant surveillance and for the evaluation of citizens via AI and for the required use of digital payment systems. The globalists most likely targeted China for these experiments before broader application in the world because the emphasis on technological development in Chinese society and Chinese naivety about the negative impact of technological innovation on human society made Chinese ready victims. So the Chinese wanted to embrace technology to continue their advancement. So they didn't really pay attention as to who was giving, like how this was going to affect them surveillance state-wise. So yes, China is definitely a part of the Great Reset. But these techno-fascist policies are promoted by many bureaucrats in the Chinese Communist Party, but they did not originate in China. They are but a part of a global strategy for control of the world's economy by the financial elites, cunning men who flatter the Chinese about the effectiveness of their response to COVID-19 and their potential to be innovative leaders through AI. And finally, what is desperately needed in response, he says, to the current effort of globalists to induce needless conflicts between nation states and within nation states through operations like the Shanghai lockdown is an alliance of citizens in China, Russia, the United States, and other countries against the predations of multinational investment banks and corporations, an alliance that resembles the international anti-fascist movements of the 1930s. The Shanghai lockdown was designed to increase the isolation of the individuals in a technological prison, while also creating greater distance between Americans or Westerners and Chinese who ought to be cooperating to respond to the threat of techno-fascism. He says it's time for us all to come together in response. So this perspective to me was extremely kind of like where I think this is at. I don't think, and we've talked about this a little bit, you know, like, is Russia pushing back? I think elements of Russia are pushing back. I think elements of China are going to be pushing back. The global agenda is very obvious. They want to exert global technological fascism over all of us. But I do think that it's not as simple as saying that it's just nation states. I think that there are breaks in these nation states, and there are people that have sold themselves out to these global fascists. And so that's where I think the Shanghai thing comes in, and that perspective. But yeah,
it's a very intriguing and interesting article.
Yeah,
by Emmanuel Pastrike, right? I mean, guy went to Harvard, went to Yale, was at the University of Tokyo for a while. So, I mean, it's very intriguing. Definitely.
Yeah, the thing is, we don't know yet. We don't know. We can only infer. We can only look at like some of the things he posted about how China doesn't have a history of doing that. How, you know, how Shanghai is a perfect city to manipulate. You can look at, are these things happening? Yeah, likely that these things are happening. It's just weird how like elements of the Chinese Communist Party are not talking about this, or how elements are like the direction to lockdown didn't come from Beijing, that it came from Shanghai. So it's just really interesting to me in terms of the geopolitical aspect of what's happening everywhere else.
Well, too, also kind of explaining the culture, saying that, you know, like they were the ready victims because of their history, right? You know, and
Yes.
Why the globalists would choose them to try out their social credit score and whatnot. So, I mean, you know, there's a lot of talk about that going on. Me and Steve were talking this morning about, like, you know, conquered people, how their culture is, and, you know, in this next article. And I want to go over to Rockfin only. And not that really we don't have to stay on YouTube, guys, but I'm sick and tired of just staying on YouTube and censoring myself. Do us a favor, like it, share it, subscribe it. Let's share the link, Julie Love, to the Rockfin. Thank you so much, guys. You're amazing. We're going to leave YouTube in 5, in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1. Goodbye.